What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into another installment of the Celtics Talk Weekly podcast. I am your host, Robbie Haytayan. Join with me is my co-host, Justin Lowe. Justin, the off-season break is finally over. The NBA Finals is over. The Boston Celtics are eliminated, but it doesn't matter because the season's over and everybody starts from square one. We got a lot to talk about in this installment, and it really centers around a certain two people here that have had Twitter or X absolutely booming over the last week. Justin, before we jump in all this, you enjoying the warm weather? It's finally nice out in the Boston area. There's the sun shining.
It's summertime. We always love summer in Boston, but I think it's better when we're celebrating in a parade rather than
right.
So that's one thing. But I'm excited for this off season in this summer, and we'll be able to get back into it. And there's some changes to be made around the Celtics.
There is. And I'll tell you what better day to start back the podcast, right, than 6/17, 6/17 day. Celtics 2 years ago hoist and become immortalized in basketball history, and they raise banner 18. And then what is it now? 20? Is it 20 years yet? No, 18 years ago, the Boston Celtics take down the Los Angeles Lakers on 6/17 to hoist banner 17. So, but let's jump right into this,
Big
Justin.
day.
Now, everyone knows, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably here for one reason and one reason only, right? The Giannis Antetokounmpo rumors. And there has been a lot to dive into about what I've been calling it on Twitter. Really, we've been calling it the Giannis saga, right? And the most in question, there is one question that we're going to answer, but this is kind of, I wanted to, for all of you guys watching or listening, this is kind of what we know so far. And I like how the no I'm going to put in parentheses, because really we don't know all of this, but this is what's been reported.
Right.
So this whole thing starts off, right, with Bill Simmons on a podcast coming out and saying essentially the Celtics are out on Giannis, and a trade to Miami seems increasingly likely. However, Simmons then, right after Game 4 of the NBA Finals, comes out and reports that he caught wind that Boston has indeed inserted themselves and made an offer, and he thinks a trade will happen early this week. In his words, that was obviously earlier last week, so nothing yet. Jalen Brown then tweets out, "The neighbor's rice always smells better," a little encrypted code. We don't know what he was talking about. However, it's important in the Giannis saga. Reports then come out that the Bucks would want to reroute Brown if there's interested, right? Teams to look out for: Portland, Atlanta, the Clippers, New Orleans. We'll talk a little bit about all those teams. Those are some listed teams who may be interested in hopping in that trade as well. Stein then comes out and confirms Bill Simmons' comments and says that Bill, who's a long friend of his, beat him to the punch, in quotes. Then it doesn't stop there. Windy then reports that Giannis prefers Miami, but has a list of teams where he'd sign extensions with, Boston being one of them. Justin, we have one more edition, the one that came out today by Brian Robb, who came out and said that the Boston Celtics are not actively shopping Jalen Brown, but are willing to part ways with him if the price is right. I really want to dive into that tweet later on in this podcast, because I really believe that is the key factor to this entire saga. Justin, I just want to start off in asking you, I think, the most important overlooming question of this entire saga regarding the Boston Celtics. Should Boston insert themselves into the Giannis sweepstakes if they haven't already?
I think anytime you have an opportunity to go get a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, you definitely dip your toes in and see what you can do to go get him. Now, what I will say is the price definitely has to be right if it means giving up one of the Jays. In this case, probably Jalen Brown. right? And I think things have to go into it and things have to factor. Like, is Giannis going to extend immediately? Is Giannis going to commit to an extension right away? Because if he's not going to do so, I don't think the Celtics should. I don't think the Celtics should go through with the deal. Okay, you have Jalen Brown locked up another 3 years, I believe. It could be 2 or 3. You have Jalen Brown locked up, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is playing on an expiring contract and goes to free agent. You don't want to trade Giannis. You don't want to trade Brown for Giannis and then lose Giannis in free agency. Now you're down Brown and Giannis. So I definitely think the Celtics have to tread carefully here. And there's also a big risk where Giannis doesn't come to Boston, and Jalen Brown doesn't like the fact that he's in these rumors and he's in these headlines. And if Jalen Brown was certainly on the trade block, on the table in talks, is he going to request a trade out of Boston? I'm not saying he is. That's not me reporting saying he is, but that is me questioning, is this a messier situation right now, even if we don't end up getting Giannis and even if we do end up keeping Jalen Brown? I think there's a lot, like, there's questions to be asked about every angle in this situation. And then you also look at and the reporting has been all over the place,
It
all
has.
over the place, conflicting reports, and it's been infuriating, really, because you have no clue, and you have these professionals trying to act like they're insiders and know more information than they know, and then they go back on their word. So this whole thing is really, really, really confusing. But if I'm Boston, you definitely dip your toes in and see what it takes to get a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he's one of the greatest players ever to play in the NBA, and he's still one of the best players in the league today. But you have to tread lightly here, and you have to tread carefully, in my opinion.
I'm with you on this one. Tread lightly is 100% the correct term to use
Mhm.
because coming into this offseason, it's clear, I think, within the Celtics organization and Celtics fandom, Celtics nation itself, that some change needs to give. And not just like, we're not talking change around the edges. I'm talking like almost a culture change within the system. Boston obviously committing to Joe Mazzulla. And I think that is a big tell here because change did seem almost guaranteed with that Brad Stevens presser. So that leads me to think, okay, if it's not Joe, right? That leaves two other options. It's either the second star being Jalen Brown. That's a culture change. The other culture change is essentially stripping everyone else, the core, dry. I'm talking White. I'm talking Pritchard. I'm talking Nemi. Right, really bringing in a whole new core around the Jays. That seems low unlikely. So for me, I think Giannis is, I don't want to say the answer, but also kind of the answer because Boston's in a position where it almost feels like you failed miserably back to back years in such embarrassing fashion. Something's got to give. You don't want to waste these prime years at Jason Tatum. So for me, the Giannis angle, I'm with you. You tread lightly here, but to not dip your toes in, right? And from the Simmons report, and I really trust Simmons on this one, he has no reason to put out a report like this if he didn't catch wind of something, right? There is absolutely, Bill Simmons is not the type of guy to come out here, especially with the Celtics. Maybe if it was LA and he wants to teeter around and shake
Right.
up the Lakers organization a little bit. When it comes to the
Do it.
Boston Celtics, he does not play around. I have every reason to believe him. The question for me, Justin, is that phone call Brad Stevens made, because he clearly has made a couple. In that offer he threw down, is that Jalen Brown? Did his name get put down on the table? Because I think to me, that is one, really the only way Boston lands Giannis. I don't see a route where we throw them White, Pritchard, Hauser, Uga. I just don't see that route because quite frankly, that's a Miami Heat type of type of trade. So are you saying, or my question, I guess, to you is this real smoke? Like, and I guess it's tough to say because we don't really know, but in your
Mm.
eyes,
I I don't know how real it is. What I can tell you is I'd love to find out immediately after the trade, whether it's a trade to Boston or Miami or another team, or even if Giannis stays put. As like, I think that's still an option, by the
I
way.
agree. Mhm.
Um, I would like to know how real was the talk Giannis to Boston. and how far did it get, and when was the line drawn when it stopped? And I want to hear that from both GMs on the Bucks side and the Celtics side. I'd love to know that because I mentioned it earlier. These reports by these reporters and everybody has a different thing. Like from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., it seems like Giannis is guaranteed to go to Miami. From 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., he's coming to Boston. From
Right.
3 p.m. to 4 p.m., what third team's coming in? So it's different. Literally hour by hour, the talks are different.
They are.
Yeah,
They
and
are.
it's messy, Rob. It's messy. So I couldn't tell you how real this is. Uh, it does seem real to the point where it is Boston and Miami duking it out for Giannis, but I could very much see Giannis either staying in Milwaukee or this mystery team out of nowhere, kind of like Damian Lillard last year, 2 years ago. It was almost guaranteed he was going to Miami, and then boom, Milwaukee swooped in.
That's been a trend with
Mm,
the mystery team. Dame, Paul George,
mm,
Kawhi. I mean, a lot of these mystery teams have swooped in and kind of and stolen these big players from big market teams. For me, and we were texting back and forth about this literally all week, and you brought it to me, and then I've brought it back to you, and then I've tweeted it, and then you've tweeted it, and then Celtics Nation has tweeted it. But the silence this week we saw from
mm.
Boston media, specifically Himmelsback, and there's a couple guys that if you're in the Celtics, realm, you lean on, right? And Washburn had a report, but as Celtic, we don't really put too much stock into the Washburn reports, right? There's a couple guys who really have their in with the Celtics, and one of those being Brian Robb. And there was silence all week, and the silence spoke so loud to us, Justin, because we figured the second the Browns name got thrown out there, right, that the Celtics would come out and be like, no, 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 this isn't correct, right? But they don't want to upset Brown. You're already treading lightly with Jalen Brown, quite frankly, because it feels like every summer he has to get put through these narratives. Um, you're already treading lightly. There's no report. There's no report. There's nothing out of Himmelsback, nothing out of Rob, just nothing out there.
Mm.
Today, Brian Robb comes out and he says the Celtics are willing to move on for Jalen Brown. And I think this is the key word, Justin, for the right guy. My question to you is two-part question. One, is he referring to as the right guy as Giannis Antetokounmpo? And two, do you think this could, and again, we're bringing up the could thing again. We're not coming on here saying we're reporting anything. Could this be Boston playing damage control?
That's interesting, Rob, because I think it could be both. Because there's also reports that are coming out today that Brad Stevens is actively trying to trade up into into the draft. Now, is that because it is a stacked draft class, and the Celtics have a towards that round of N1 draft pick, or is it Brad trying to acquire draft assets in this year's draft to send to Milwaukee to help complete the deal? I think that's a fair question, and I think that both things could be very true. I Rob, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm sick of this Giannis stuff. Like, I
Oh
would
yeah,
just
oh
it
yeah.
was fun the first couple days and
Now it's
whatnot, and
just
and
torture.
now it's just annoying. Now it's like, can we just figure out what's going on? And you look at Miami. Miami's been in talks with Milwaukee since February,
Yep.
and the deal hasn't changed much. So is it Milwaukee just genuinely isn't interested in Miami's package, or is it they're trying to push the ante up because now Jalen Brown is in talks? Jalen Brown, an MVP candidate's in talks for Giannis. Well, what else can they get for Giannis?
I want to throw you out. I think this is what happened. And again, I got no sources. I think that the Celtics offered Brown. I think that's what the original Simmons report is, right? That they caught wind that the Celtics called the Bucks because there was also a report the Celtics inquired about Giannis back at the deadline, right? We didn't have any idea what a package looked like. We didn't know if Jalen Brown was involved, if it was Derek White in pieces, or what exactly. There was an inquiry about Giannis. I think Boston calls up Milwaukee and they say Jalen Brown's name, and I think he's inserted into the conversation. I think then trickles down and it transpires. The heat package excuse me, the heat package is leaked. Brad catches wind of that. He says, okay, I can beat this. He goes and he offers Brown. I think the Bucks then today leak they're willing to wait until after the draft
That
to
ticks
force
me off. Oh,
but hear me out. I think this is them forcing Miami's hand. The Heat
mm,
have stood pat now on this trade package, Justin, of Hero, Jaquez, Ware, in 3 first-round picks, including the 13th overall in this year's draft. They've stood pat on that. They haven't upped the ante. They haven't lowered the ante. They've said, here's our offer. If you want it, take it, right? In very Pat Riley fashion.
right.
I think Milwaukee is going to try to milk this thing to see if they can get more out of Miami. And if they can get more out of Miami, I think they go their direction. But if they can't, and this Simmons report's true, then I think like draft morning it breaks, because I do believe Brown's on the table. And I think Milwaukee's sitting here thinking, okay, well, we can assume and operate as if this trade's going to go through, right? We're going to get Brown. We're going to get a draft pick from that third team and blah, 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 right? I'm not saying there's framework done, but in my own conspiracy theory head, I almost feel like that's how this thing's played out. And Milwaukee's just playing leverage now. How can we up Miami's ante? Oh, Miami wants to up the ante. Okay, boom. Now, you know what I'm saying? Because this is a bidding war at the end of the day.
Right. I think it's really, really interesting as well with everything going on. And like, I, I'm trying to figure out exactly what Milwaukee wants out of this. Is it just draft capital and some young stars? Because if I'm being honest with you, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Nikola Jovic, like that's not making me bite for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's just not. Uh, I quite frankly, who wants to take on that Jovic contract? If you seen that, I wonder if
Hero
that.
contract.
I just wonder if that is Milwaukee's thing. It's not necessarily they're against the player; it's the contracts that they're on. Miami does a pretty good job at paying their guys quick, and maybe even jumping the gun a little bit. But I think from a Boston's perspective, Rob, and I've said this, and I've gotten a little bit of heat because, and I'm like, I never said I wanted this. I just think that if this is going to happen, this is what's going to happen. If we're going to get Giannis, it's going to be for one of the Jays, and it's looking like Jalen Brown. It just is. That's what it's going to be. Okay. Do you really want to pay Giannis, Jalen Brown, and Jason Tatum on one team?
Can't.
You just can't do that.
Can't.
And even if you could, you can't build 15 other players around them on vet minimum contracts and expect to compete for a title. You just can't do that. Celtics finally got their asses out of the aprons. They finally did. Why would they go back into it?
100%.
Why would they go back into it? You know what I'm saying? So it just doesn't make sense. I think if the Celtics are going to do this, it's going to be with Jalen Brown. And quite frankly, it has to be with Jalen Brown.
I'm with you. And that is what keeps bringing me back to, okay, if there's an offer, why you can't. So what are you going to do? You're going to bring in Brown, Tatum, and Giannis, and the rest are going to be minimums? Because, I mean, you could maybe dance around you dance around the edges and you can go into that second apron. What, in 4 years from now, you're financially screwed. You got your Giannis who's extended again, right? And you really have no direction. Could it land you a title? Absolutely, right? But
I don't know. I don't know if it can. I don't
the
know.
The odds are better, I think, without. So I think it's tough to say because, you bring in Brown, Giannis, and Tatum. That's just an unreal. It's a trio. It's a three-headed monster. But you're going to be thin at the back end of the bench.
I don't know if it is. I think on paper it's a three-headed monster. On paper, absolutely. But on court play, that's 3 MVP caliber players playing on one team at the same time on the same court. That is exceptionally hard to do, especially in today's NBA. I don't know if we've seen a trio quite like that. MVP, we're not talking all-star level players. We're talking MVP candidate, MVP-esque players.
Yeah.
I just don't think that could work on this team. I don't think that could work in your favor. I just really don't. So I think if you're going to do it, unfortunately, it's going to have to take up Jalen Brown. I'm not telling the Celtics to do it. I'm not telling them to not do it. But at the same time, that's just the reality of the situation.
It is, because, and that's what I'm saying, Brad Stevens isn't going to sit here with those 3 contracts and try to construct a roster. So that's why when I hear an offer was made, okay, well, any logical thought would be, okay, the offer's Brown. And if you compare it to what Miami's offered, you got to think, okay, even at Brown's lowest market value, I'm talking teams are valuing him at his absolute lowest. It's still higher than, in my opinion, Tyler Hero, Hami Haka's, Kelal Ware in a handful of picks.
I mean, I told you this. Jalen Brown is coming 2 years removed of a Finals MVP and 1 year removed from his best year of his career, an MVP candidate. If you're going to trade Jalen Brown or you're going to dip your toes into the market of Jalen Brown, right now it's time to do it. Like I said, folks, relax. I didn't say to do it. I'm not saying split the Jays. I'm not saying to not split the Jays. I'm just saying if there's a time the Celtics are going to look in to what the trade value is for Jalen Brown, I would probably assume it'd be right about now. I don't know how true these reports are, Rob. I wish I could tell you. I wish we could be told because it's just,
Right.
it's every day it's something different. Today it's different. Tomorrow it's going to be different.
What's so weird to me though is if I'm Brad, and I don't think Brad would do this, but I'm not trading $1 in Jalen Brown for 4 quarters. That's what I'm not doing, because I mentioned earlier in the podcast the 3 major culture shift options, right? Missoula, Brown, and everyone else, right? Those are the 3 options I think you could really culturally change this team. If it's not Giannis, then are you really positioning yourself better without Brown on this team next to Tatum? Because it's like, here's my thing. Okay, you move Brown for Murphy, a couple draft picks, and then maybe a player or 2 more, right? From to New Orleans. Does that really position the Celtics to be better next year? No. Does it create more flexibility and more moves potential? Yes, but this goes back to the reason why I'm all in on Giannis is because you're going to pair him next to Jason Tatum. You have 2 top 5 guys next to each other. You get more presence at the rim. You get a 6'10" freak who can get you 40 points, can get you 15 rebounds, can get you 10 to 15 assists on the same night. That's why I do it, because the return is clearly better. Okay, you're swapping 1 for 1. Now, if the conversation, Justin, was Jalen Brown, Ugo Gonzalez, Baylor Shireman, and 3 first-round picks, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I'm not giving up my assets, my young core, and my superstar to go get you. But if I'm making a 1 for 1 swap and there's a third team that's willing to disassemble their assets to go get to bring in Jalen Brown while we get Giannis, yeah, I get Giannis. I get to keep my young core and I get to keep my draft capital in the future. That's a no-brainer.
There's been like, I don't know how real they are or what, but I try to check the sources as much as possible because there's a lot of clickbaiters on or just people who think they have inside sources and they don't. On Twitter, it's like Boston, Miami, and Milwaukee still trade, but instead of Giannis going to Miami, Giannis goes to Boston, Jalen Brown goes to Miami, and Tyler Hero, Kelal Ware, and the draft assets go to Milwaukee. I wonder if that's been talked about. I wonder if these 3 teams, it is so clear that Milwaukee wants nothing to do with Jalen Brown other than to use him to flip him in another deal if they can't find a third team. They do not want Jalen Brown. They want to get young, and that's why they're so precious about these assets. I think if they're going to make a rebuild, they're going to start from scratch. They're going to trade their franchise player, rip the Band-Aid and figure it out. And I don't know how confident Miami is on a day-to-day basis, because yesterday there's reports saying Miami actually think Boston has the better offer and Boston has a better chance at landing Giannis. And then on the other end of that, Rob, you're kind of sitting there and saying, boy, if people really think Miami believes that and whatnot, like what else can Miami do to change that deal to bring in Giannis? Then do they get overexcited and they throw in like a Norman Powell or an Andrew Wiggins, and then all of a sudden you gave up way too much for Giannis? I think that go into factor as well.
It does. And from the deciding factor for the Miami side of this for me is the idea that they've been talking for so long. Pat Riley is one stubborn man, and that's been proven. And the Heat Nation will tell you that. I've been all over Heat Twitter over the last 72 hours, and it's clear that Pat Riley is stubborn. And to me, Okay, Milwaukee, if they don't want Jalen Brown, that means what they're looking for is young assets and draft picks, right? They're looking for some guys with some really good potential that they could get some flyers and maybe you get yourself a stud, right? Almost like a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, right? He was a flyer. He was not hyped up to be the SGA is today. Here comes Oklahoma City. They take their risk on a flyer. They develop their superstar, right? I think that's kind of what Milwaukee's looking for. A 22-year-old, 21-year-old who's shown flashes and can kind of be the guy they bring up within their system in draft assets. So because it's clear they don't want Brown. So for me, it's like, okay, well, you're offering 26-year-old hero, right? He's not going to turn into a star. Jaime Jaquez is 24, 25. That's not your answer. Kalal Ware, he's young. He's shown some flashes, but that's not the guy. So they're really trading Giannis for a couple of guys to keep them just over the 30 win mark, just under the 30 win mark, the 13th pick and 2 first round picks that are going to be within their Miami, right? So they're really not going to the lottery more times than not. So it's like, is that really the deal that gets Giannis? Probably not.
Can I ask you something? Do you think the new tanking rules have anything to do with how trades will be made moving forward?
I think a lot like the new CBA, there needs to be an example team. I think the Celtics for the CBA were like the example team. Oh crap, don't go into the second apron. You're going to screw yourself if you do for too long. Teams recognize that. I think there's going to be a situation that presents itself where it's like, oh, here come the Jazz, right? You can't do this. Like if you put yourself in your situation like Utah, you're going to screw yourself. I think it will. It's just going to take an example team, I think.
Nobody wants to play in Utah, by the way. You have you have all these draft prospects don't want to go to Utah. Walker Kessler wants out. Would be interesting to see if Brad hopped on the phone with Danny Ainge and talked about that. Is Walker Kessler a free agent, actually?
He is. I
Okay, so
believe.
maybe he doesn't have to talk to
I
Danny.
I
Maybe.
actually read a Walker Kessler report today that he turned down a $125 million
Mm,
contract extension
yeah,
with Utah.
it's interesting. I mean, we'll get into potential free agents later on, but because there's a lot of guys that the Celtics could use. But I just think that also to go back on my point earlier about like the whole Miami deal. One, how much are they going to change their deal for Milwaukee? And two, uh, geez, of course I already forgot. Oh, they already have a backup plan, a backup list of
I saw
other
that.
stars to go get. I don't know how real that is. It's very Miami, by the way. Like any Miami offseason, they are targeting or in talks, air quotes, with the star. I believe it was Trae Young, uh, Kawhi. Excuse me, Trae Young and Kawhi Leonard. There might be one more. I forget who it was. So that also makes me wonder if they're starting to pivot a little bit and looking at worst case scenario, we don't go get Giannis. So I don't know how much leverage Miami has, if any. I just want this all to be over because everything that's being reported, everything that's being said is just so meaningless, in my opinion. And I'm sick of the back and forth BS. Like, oh, today it's Boston, tomorrow it's Miami, another day it's he might stay. So it's ridiculous.
I think that Giannis is the first domino to fall, and then the offseason's really under the way. I do
Mm.
believe this happens before the draft. I don't think Milwaukee wants to go into this draft without extra capital in this year's class and without a direction to set themselves up for free agency and so on and so on. Um, I will say on the Miami side of things, it to me feels like they played their hand. And when I say that, because you make a good point, what else can they offer? Davion Mitchell, he's promising, but he's been, passed around a little bit already. You got Powell and Wiggins, who they could add to and spicing up the deal from Milwaukee's side, where, okay, now you're rerouting Wiggins in Norm for a couple extra picks here and there. That's going to take a little bit more of using the phone. That might not even happen. And from Miami side of things, okay, we're adding Wiggs in Norm. Now you're playing the whole Celtics side of things that we're advocating for Brad not to do. And now you're stripping your core clean. You're bringing on a big
Right.
contract. And now you got to build. And you don't have 2 years with Giannis to waste, right? You got to, if you're trading for Giannis, you got to be ready to hit the ground running next year. So from Miami's side, I'm almost wondering, have they played their hands? And if Boston's throwing in Brown, is there even a way they can counter that and sneak in there? And that's not even to say, who knows? There could be an Orlando, there could be an Atlanta, there could be a Portland who's offering Scoot, who's offering Franz, who's offering, Say in Kuminga. Like, you don't know what's out there in this market. And it feels like to me that Miami's just kind of sitting down, waiting to see, is Milwaukee going to pick us? Like, are we the ones that are going to, right? It's like the bidder that sits in the back that bid $5 off the start and just hoping and praying no one ups the ante to $6, because that's really what it boils down to.
What pick does Milwaukee have? Is it
Milwaukee
6?
doesn't own their pick. Portland owns their pick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What does that? Oh, right, because the point was for Portland to be involved for Milwaukee to get their pick back.
To get their pick back.
I forgot that, because that was one of the reasons why I was like, Milwaukee is such a mess this year, and they don't even have their own pick. Them in New Orleans, they don't have their pick either.
And I think that's kind of the driving factor, Justin, into why I think I'm sorry, the 10th pick, not the 8th pick. I think that's kind of why my Milwaukee, is going to feel a little bit of pressure to make a move before the draft. Because if you're going into this draft class, which is supposed to be the most loaded draft class we've seen in a decade, if you go into this in this class and you don't own your own pick because you moved it, that doesn't look so great.
No, it sucks. And and they definitely feel it. I wouldn't rule out Giannis staying in Milwaukee, and they build a competent team around Giannis. I think you still have and the East is so much more competitive than what many thought. Like, dude, next year I'm excited. Like, Washington's going to be interesting when AD and Trey are healthy. Charlotte and Indiana are going to be really interesting. Indiana's going to be healthy. Charlotte's going to want revenge. And I mean, they had a phenomenal year this year. Orlando had a down year with injuries, but we know that they're a top 5 team in the East. Could be a top 3 team in the East if they're healthy. I don't know if the Bucks if they want to build around Giannis and commit to winning. Giannis just wants to win. He would love to stay with Milwaukee if Milwaukee could commit to winning. I just don't know if Milwaukee wants to commit to winning right now. I think that is what it is. And that's why I also mentioned with the whole tanking rule, if that might change things moving forward and how teams make deals and okay, we're getting all these draft picks from this team, but they're probably going to get penalized if they lose on purpose. So they might win some games. So it might not be as a good pick as it used to be. So I'm interested, and there's only like so much that we can say, and there's only so much more that we can think, but the deal potentially being dragged into July past the draft, as some reports are saying today, I don't see it happening either, but the reports are now coming out that this could be dragged into free agency into July.
Right.
How likely is it? Probably unlikely, but I want to know the other offers that teams are throwing in because clearly other teams are calling and Milwaukee's not hanging up the phone.
Right. I could see Milwaukee going that route. They go for a Ja, they go for a Trae Young, someone of that nature. The only thing is that if they got to roll the dice that they get it right, because Giannis is on an expiring. If I were to guess, Giannis isn't going to commit this summer, right? To if he does stay in Milwaukee, I don't see him signing a long-term extension there this summer. I think it would be like an all-star break thing where you see it break if they're in the position where they have a future and they could win. So if you're Milwaukee, you got a lot of work to do because you got to move off the mound. Now we're thinking Milwaukee perspective. Okay, how can we construct a championship team? You got to move off of Miles Turner's contract. You probably got to get rid of Brook Lopez.
Nobody wants either of those contracts.
Not Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis.
You
got to get off of those two. So it's like, okay, so, it's a longer, harder path, I think, to build and take the gamble that, okay, we're going to get this right, even though we haven't for the past 4 seasons, really 3 since 2022. They got eliminated by Boston. We're going to try to roll the dice again and potentially lose Giannis for nothing. I think that path is a huge gamble. You take that path, I think you see ownership fire the management, the coaching staff. Like, that's when they clear house. You lose Giannis for nothing to gamble. And then to the report that this thing could drag, I mentioned it earlier. I think if Giannis isn't moved by draft night, I think they keep him. I do. I think that's the tell.
Do you think with Milwaukee, if they do trade Giannis, I would assume that means Giannis wasn't going to re-sign with the Bucks, right? Almost like, crap, Giannis isn't coming back. We better trade him so we at least get something for him. We just don't let him walk for nothing, right?
I think that with a city like Milwaukee, I think if Giannis was willing to re-sign, they absolutely re-sign him and they cash in their sellout crowds in their jersey sales because they kind of
Mm,
operate like the Denver Nuggets, right? Where they have this generational talent. They cashed in on a ring that was like not really expected. They drafted Giannis, not expecting to get this top five
right.
MVP, top five power forward of all time,
So quick
kind of like
too.
Denver, right?
Mm,
Exactly. And they lucked out and they drafted this generational player. And really, since then, I think if management they turn profit every single year if number 34 on the Milwaukee Bucks is suiting up for them. So if it was up to them, I think they'd absolutely, cash out their check and the honest, you would retire a buck and you're set to for the next 5 years on turning profit. I think with Milwaukee, the problem they're running into is that they might get one more year of that, but it seems like Giannis is kind of just fed up and not fed up, but he's just ready to kind of go change the scenery.
I also wonder where Giannis gets traded. Does that mean that you're taking on Thanasis and Alex?
I hope not.
Well, no, it sounds like a joke question, but it is the truth. And I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Uh, there's reports saying that Giannis and his agent are trying to get involved in talks with Boston, but Boston does not go through player agents and players. They go through GMs and they handle their business that way. Is Giannis and his and his agent trying to chirp in and say, "Hey, can you take my brothers with me?" And Boston's like, "They ain't biting at that. Like, that's not what we do here. We're not doing that." It,
Can,
it
can
sounds like a joke, but I do wonder if there's any truth to that, and if there's any possibility that is holding teams back, taking on those two contracts that are likely going to just sit at the end of the bench anyway. With all due respect,
can you imagine a Shams report that consists of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Thanasis Antetokounmpo,
yeah,
and Alex Antetokounmpo
I
have been
can,
traded?
because and that was another big thing with Milwaukee last year. Towards the end of the year, Giannis was healthy and he was upset because he had the opportunity to play with his brothers. He was healthy enough to get out there and play with his brothers, and the Bucks held him back, and he didn't appreciate that. So he does value playing alongside his brothers. I'm sure he's grateful that they're all in the league, but you don't. No way he expected those three to be on the sharing the court together. So I think that's something you factor in too. I really think it's being overlooked and not mentioned that much, but I could see it.
I also think that from that aspect and that angle, you don't playing devil's advocate here. You don't have the same pull in Miami, Boston, Atlanta, Portland, and these other areas that you do. You're Milwaukee's golden child, right?
Mm,
Giannis is coming to Boston. You're still playing for Jason Tatum City, right? And you're still, if Brad's making a move, he's calling number 0 first. And that's interesting to me. And this isn't an aspect that no Boston media is talking about really, but do you think Brad has had any conversations with Tatum being, hey, Jason, what do you think? Because at the end of the day, if you're Brad and you move Brown, and I know there's all these narratives, Brown and
it's a
Tatum,
major culture shift, though. Regardless, no, I
it
understand what you're
is.
saying.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do you run that decision through your billion-dollar asset? I mean, let's be honest here. Jason Tatum is the value of the Boston Celtics, and it almost feels like to me, I'm hesitant if he doesn't because it's like, what if Tatum all along is like, no, like we want to see this thing through. I'm with Brown on this, right? And then you move Brown again. It's all speculation, but I almost wonder if there's been any talk between Brad and Jason this week on keeping him up to date and keeping him in the loop because you also don't want to piss him off in the aspect of he finds out Jalen Brown got traded through this thing, right? Through his
Yeah,
phone.
right. Yeah, which has happened to star players before, and
And
it
yeah,
hasn't boiled over well.
and it happened to this core with Ime. So it's happened before. You just want to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I do think that the Celtics. I don't think the Celtics will trade for Giannis, and that'll probably change tomorrow. I'll probably be like, "No, they are." Um, I don't think the Celtics trade for Giannis. I think that the Celtics have a phenomenal foundation right now, and they still have that championship core of Tatum, Brown, White, Pritchard. I think you start to explore ways to keep building around those guys. I understand that we're 2 years removed from a championship, and the last 2 years have been bitter playoff performance endings, but I really can see this true with this group, and I think it would be so, so cool to see Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum hoist another championship together after being through so much. I just don't know if wh- I don't know how to word it. What I will say, Rob, I trust whatever Brad Stevens does. And he has given me zero reason to not trust him. If he makes a move, I'm not going to overreact about it in a good way or a bad way. It is what it is. And I really trust Brad. If he thinks Giannis is the answer and going in that direction is the answer, that's the answer. If he thinks keeping Tatum and Brown together and holding back from Giannis is the answer, then that's the answer. But I think the Celtics right now have a phenomenal foundation, championship experience foundation. I think they make some tweaks this offseason, and they don't have to be major tweaks. They don't. I don't think this team needs a major shakeup. I think it needs a decent shakeup because it was clear as day how Brad Stevens sounded in that press conference in his closer. But I just don't see Giannis ending up in Boston. And I do think that's a conversation that Brad Stevens has with a lot of people, not just Jason Tatum. I think it's something you sit down and talk to about everybody. That Joe Mazzulla, which Giannis has had very high praise for Joe Mazzulla recently. I think you sit down with Mazzulla. I even say you sit down with guys like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard. Like, if they're not involved in the deal and it is the Jalen Brown route, I think you sit down with guys around you and what do you think? You have to value when you're talking about trading your franchise player and Jalen Brown, alongside Jason Tatum, that's a conversation to be had with a lot more people than just the manager and the owner, right?
1,000%.
So I think
1,000%.
that I think the conversations are brewing. I wouldn't take Jalen Brown's Rice comment to
No.
like, I think the timing of it was not great, but not everything is revolved around the NBA and the offseason and free agency and trades. He has been touring in Asia and he has been doing rituals. Rice is pretty big in Asia. It's pretty big in their cuisine. He literally could have meant, hey, the neighbor's rice smells pretty good. Like,
It felt
really
wrong to not include that in the Giannis
No,
comment.
yeah, and it is kind of cryptic. I mean, like, I remember years ago, back when we almost got Jimmy Butler and Andre Drummond at the 2016 deadline, Isaiah Thomas was in the middle of all those reports tweeting googly eye emojis, and he said afterwards, like, I was just watching a TV show. Like,
You so, like,
I
actually, that's gotten me thinking recently. I feel like the era of the googly eyes has gone to rest on Twitter. I feel like nobody tweets out googly eyes anymore. Of like
uh,
I'm so like, I feel like
or
yeah.
they don't mean much anymore. Where
Yeah,
it's
it's just
like,
like
look out for this. It's like, no,
yeah, and I
that
feel like
used to, like, back when, like, 10 years ago, when somebody posted the googly eyes, you got
Twitter,
nervous. You
yeah, I
got,
mean, Instagram and Twitter, I was
right.
on my phone posting my Canva graphics as
What
fast
do
as
you
I could.
what do you think the emoji is nowadays that gets you, like, hyped? Like, I think the red alert is
The red
interesting.
alert. You know what used to do it for me was the, hourglass.
Mm,
When I saw the
yeah.
hourglass, I was like, "Ooh, something's brew." I wanna say it was, like, right before the Kyrie trade where, like, there was an eye emoji and an hourglass that were posted, and I was like, "Whoa, like, what?" And so I don't
Emojis are
know.
cryptic.
They
Emojis are
are.
so cryptic.
I don't know what to I don't know what it is now.
Or what are they called gifts?
Yeah,
Gifts
yeah,
gifts are cryptic. Like,
yeah.
Tyler Hero's brother posted a gif
With the
of a
band.
buck, and it's like, is that cryptic? Does that mean he's going to Milwaukee, or is he just being immature and saying, "Oh, this will stir the
That's
pot.
yeah,
This will
yeah, I
stir
think
the pot."
he's stirring the pot there,
You know,
no doubt about it, but, yeah, so listen, guys, we're gonna try our best to have you guys covered for all this Giannis saga, as best as we can. If you're not following us on our social medias, we've been all over Twitter the past couple of days, giving our thoughts, giving our takes, replying to people, sparking conversations. I've actually had a lot of fun on Twitter. I think I've been
Mm,
underutilizing it because I
mm,
have a blast just kind of getting to pick your guys' brains. I was talking to Greeny the other day about his opinion on some of the trades coming through. So we've had a lot of fun there. Like I said, again, we are back for a very busy offseason. We don't know our
mm.
posting schedule yet. If I had to guess, it's going to be a little bit more sporadic. So keep an eye out on our
Yeah, we're
Twitter
not
because we'll keep you
gonna
updated.
set a
Yeah,
day. I think with the off season, it's hard too as well because like breaking news happens. It's like, oh, we got to
yeah.
talk about this. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a Sunday in July where we should be recording, but there's just nothing to talk about. And
Right.
so just keep an eye out. Follow us on our socials. Again, a little shorter of an episode here, but we really just wanted to cover the Giannis saga and all those aspects. We're going to be driving into the draft. Stay tuned. Maybe we'll be live for the draft. We'll let you guys know. No,
Mm,
nothing guaranteed, but we were talking about that. But it feels good to be back in the studio with you, Justin, as always.
mm.
And guys, till next time. Next time we see you, Giannis might be a Celtic or might not. We don't know.
Cryptic. Ooh, googly eyes.
uh, sources say we'll see you next week. See you guys.